Hana wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked down the long metal hallway of the Galactic Conservation Station. Her boots made soft sounds on the floor. She had been working here for 3 years now, taking care of young creatures from all across the galaxy. Some were cute, some were strange, all of them needed help. The station floated in space, orbiting a small moon that nobody owned. It was a safe place, far from wars and politics. Here, orphaned young ones could grow up without fear. At least that was the idea. Hana's supervisor, a tall woman named Borem, waited for her outside the holding bay. Borem's face looked worried. "We have a problem," Borem said. Hana sighed. There was always a problem. Last week, a young Kelvin had eaten through 3 metal walls. The week before, a spitter had covered the medical bay in green slime. "What kind of problem?" Hana asked. "Vreln cubs," Borem said quietly. Hana stopped walking. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vreln. They were warriors, hunters. Their home planet was one of the most dangerous worlds ever discovered. Adult Vreln could tear through steel with their claws. They never backed down from a fight. They never showed mercy. "How old?" Hana asked. "Young, maybe 6 or 7 in human years," Borem said. 3 of them, their pod was attacked. All the adults died. Hana felt her heart sink. "That's terrible." "Nobody else will take them," Borem continued. "The Threxian handler quit when she heard. The molten handler said he would rather jump out an airlock. You're the only one left." "Why me?" Borem gave her a sad smile. "Because you never say no, and because you're human, maybe they won't see you as a threat." Hana wanted to argue. She wanted to say this was too dangerous. But she thought about 3 scared children who had just watched their family die. Even if they were Vreln, they were still children. "Okay," she said, "I'll try." The holding bay doors opened with a hiss. Inside, the room was dark. Hana's eyes needed a moment to adjust. Then she saw them. 3 small figures huddled in the far corner. They had scales that shimmered between green and black. Their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. Each one had sharp claws on their hands and feet. Their tails were thin and covered in small spikes. They looked terrified. The largest one stepped forward. He was maybe a meter tall. He bared his teeth and made a hissing sound that made Hana's skin crawl. "It's okay," Hana said softly. She sat down on the floor, making herself smaller. "Nobody here will hurt you." The cub hissed again. Behind him, the other 2 pressed against the wall. Hana slowly reached into her pocket. She pulled out a nutrition bar. It was her lunch, but she didn't need it. She broke it into 3 pieces and placed them on the floor in front of her. Then she slid them toward the cubs. The cubs didn't move. "You must be hungry," Hana said. "It's safe, I promise." She stood up slowly and backed away toward the door. The cubs watched her with suspicious eyes. Hana turned and left the room. Through the observation window, she watched and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then the smallest cub, a female, crept forward. She sniffed the food. She looked back at the others. Then she grabbed a piece and ran back to the corner. The middle cub, another female, came next. She was faster, more confident. She took her piece and retreated. The large male was last. He walked forward slowly, never taking his eyes off the window where Hana stood. He knew she was watching. He grabbed the last piece of food but didn't eat it right away. He carried it back to the others. Hana smiled. He was protecting them, making sure they ate first. For the next 3 days, Hana followed the same routine. She would enter the room, sit down, and leave food. She never tried to touch them. She never made sudden moves. She just talked to them in a soft voice about nothing important. She told them about Earth, about rain and oceans and forests. She told them about her cat back home, who was probably annoyed that she had been gone so long. She told them jokes that they couldn't possibly understand. Slowly, the cubs began to relax. On the 4th day, they didn't hide when she entered. On the 5th day, they sat close enough that she could see their eyes clearly. The male had a small scar above his left eye. One female had a missing claw on her right hand. The smallest female had patterns on her scales that looked like stars. Hana learned their names from the transport records. The male was Tak. The female with the missing claw was Vriss. The smallest was Nola. On the sixth day, something changed. Hana entered the room as usual. She sat down with their food. But this time, Nola didn't wait. She walked right up to Hana and took the food from her hand. Hana held her breath. Nola's claws were sharp. One wrong move could mean a trip to the medical bay. But Nola just took the food gently and sat down next to Hana to eat. Vriss came next, then Tak, who sat on Hana's other side. They ate in silence. Hana was afraid to move, afraid to break whatever trust had formed. When they finished, they didn't run away. They just sat there. "You've been through something terrible," Hana said quietly. "I'm sorry about your pod. I'm sorry about the adults who took care of you, but you're safe here, I promise." Tak made a sound, low and rumbling. It wasn't a hiss. It was something else, something almost like a purr. After that day, everything changed. The cubs followed Hana everywhere. When she worked with other creatures, they watched from a distance. When she ate in the cafeteria, they sat under her table. When she walked to different parts of the station, she could hear their claws clicking on the floor behind her. Other handlers stared. Some looked afraid, some looked amazed. Boram just shook her head and smiled. "You have 3 shadows now," Boram said. "I guess I do," Hana replied. The cubs never went more than a few meters away from her. At night, they slept outside her quarters, curled up against the door. Hana put blankets there for them. She made sure they had water and food nearby. She knew this wasn't normal. Vreln young were supposed to be raised in groups on their home world. They were supposed to fight each other to prove their strength. They were supposed to be trained as warriors from birth. But these cubs had lost everything. They were orphans in a strange place, surrounded by aliens they had been taught to see as prey or enemies. And somehow, they had decided that Hana was safe. 2 weeks passed. The cubs grew more comfortable. They played sometimes, chasing each other through the empty corridors late at night. They practiced hunting moves on old equipment, but they always came back to Hana. One evening, after a long shift, Hana was exhausted. She said goodnight to the cubs and headed to her quarters. She needed a shower badly. She had been cleaning the Kelvin habitat all day and smelled like sulfur. She entered her small room and heard the familiar sound of claws on metal behind her. The cubs had followed her, as always. They waited outside as she went into the bathroom. Hana closed the door and started the water. The sound of the shower was loud in the small space. She stepped under the spray and sighed with relief. The hot water felt wonderful on her sore muscles. She didn't hear the bathroom door open. She didn't hear the small, frightened sounds the cubs made. She had no idea that on the other side of the curtain, 3 young Vreln were preparing to save her life from what they thought was an attack. All she knew was that one moment she was peacefully washing her hair, and the next moment, chaos erupted around her. Tak heard the sound first. His ears were sharper than his sister's. He lifted his head from where he lay outside Hana's door. The sound was strange, loud, like many things falling at once. Then he heard Hana's voice. She was making sounds, singing sounds, but to Tak they sounded wrong. They sounded like the noises prey made when they were hurt. "Water," Vriss whispered. Her scales turned darker, the color they became when she was afraid. "That's water." On their home world, water was the enemy. It fell from the sky in storms that could strip flesh from bone. It pooled in places where dangerous things lived. The adults had taught them to fear it, to run from it, to never let it touch them for long. Nola pressed against Tak's side. She was shaking. "Why is Hana in water?" "Maybe she doesn't know," Vriss said. "Maybe humans don't know about water." Tak stood up. His instincts were screaming at him. Hana was in danger. Hana, who had fed them when they were starving. Hana, who had spoken softly when everything else in the universe was loud and scary. Hana, who had never hit them, never hurt them, never demanded they prove their strength. Another sound came from inside. Hana made a sharp noise like a gasp. To the cubs, it sounded like pain. "She's being attacked," Nola said. Her voice was high and frightened. "We have to help her," Vriss said. Tak didn't wait. He ran at the bathroom door and hit it with his shoulder. The door was not locked. It flew open and banged against the wall. Steam filled the room. It made everything hard to see. But Tak could hear the water falling. He could hear Hana's voice. She was still making those sounds. "Hana," Tak called out. It was the first time he had said her name out loud. Through the steam, he saw her. She was standing inside a small space with a curtain. Water was falling on her from above. Lots of water. More water than Tak had ever seen in his life. Terror filled him. Hana was going to die. The water would hurt her. It would strip away her skin, her soft human skin that had no scales to protect it. "Get her out," Vriss shouted behind him. All three cubs rushed forward. Tak grabbed the curtain and pulled. It tore away from the wall. Nola and Vriss reached for Hana, trying to pull her away from the falling water. Hana screamed. It was loud and sudden. She slipped on the wet floor and grabbed the wall to steady herself. Her eyes were wide. "What are you doing?" she yelled. But the cubs didn't understand. They only knew they had to save her. Tak grabbed her arm with both hands and pulled. Vriss pushed from behind. Nola tried to turn off the water but didn't know how. "Stop, stop, I'm okay," Hana shouted. They didn't stop. Tak's claws dug into her arm, not meaning to hurt her but desperate to get her to safety. Hana stumbled forward out of the shower. Water was everywhere now, all over the floor, all over the cubs, all over Hana. "It's attacking, the water is attacking," Nola cried. Hana finally understood. She stopped fighting them. No, it's not attacking, it's okay. It's safe, I'm safe." But the cubs formed a circle around her, their backs to her, their claws out. They were protecting her from the shower, from the water that still fell inside it. They were ready to fight. The door to Hana's quarters burst open. 2 security officers ran in, attracted by the noise. They stopped when they saw the scene. Hana was wrapped in a towel she had grabbed. She was soaking wet, standing in a puddle. 3 small Vreln cubs were between her and the shower, making defensive hissing sounds. "What happened?" the first officer asked. His hand was on his weapon. "Don't," Hana said quickly. "Don't hurt them. They thought I was in danger." "From what?" the second officer asked. "From the shower," Hana said. She sounded tired. "They thought the water was attacking me." The officers looked at each other. One of them started to laugh, then stopped when he saw Hana's face. "Get Director Quan," Hana said, "and get the Vreln liaison, we need to talk." The cubs didn't move until Hana placed her hand on Tak's head. "It's okay now," she said softly. "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm safe. The water doesn't hurt humans, I promise." Tak looked up at her. His yellow eyes were still full of fear. How could water not hurt? Water was dangerous. Every Vreln knew that. Had Hana lost her mind? 20 minutes later, Hana sat in her quarters wearing dry clothes. The cubs sat close to her, still watching the bathroom door like it might attack at any moment. Director Quan arrived first. She was a short woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I heard there was an incident," Quan said. "The cubs tried to rescue me from my shower," Hana explained. Before Quan could respond, another figure entered. He was Vreln but fully grown. His scales were deep green, almost black. His claws were as long as knives. He wore armor marked with symbols that Hana didn't recognize. The 3 cubs immediately shrank back. Nola made a small, frightened sound. Even Tak, who was usually brave, lowered his head. "I am Thex," the Vreln warrior said. His voice was deep and rough. "I am the liaison between your station and the Vreln Collective. I came as soon as I heard about the cubs." "They've been doing well," Hana said quickly. This was just a misunderstanding. Thex looked at the cubs, his eyes narrowed. They tried to pull you from water. Yes, they thought it was hurting me. And they tried to protect you, a human. Thex's voice sounded strange, surprised, maybe disgusted. Yes, Hana said. She lifted her chin. They were very brave. Thex was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Hana's blood run cold. These cubs are defective, he said. Vreln young do not protect soft species. They do not show fear of water. They do not form bonds with prey. Something is wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them, Hana said. Her voice was sharp. They've been through trauma. They lost their pod. They're scared and alone. Then they should be sent to a proper Vreln training facility, Thex said, where they can learn to be warriors, where they can learn strength. They are strong, Hana argued. They were strong enough to try to save someone they care about. That is not strength, Thex said. That is weakness. Caring makes one weak. Fear makes one weak. These cubs should have let you die if they thought you were in danger. They should have watched and learned. Instead, they risked themselves for you. The room was silent. Even Director Quan seemed shocked. Hana stood up. The cubs immediately stood with her, pressing against her legs. On my world, Hana said slowly, we believe that caring for others is the greatest strength of all. We believe that protecting those who are vulnerable is what makes someone truly brave. Your world is soft, Thex said. Your species has never known real danger. You don't understand what it takes to survive in a universe that wants you dead. Maybe, Hana said, but these cubs trusted me, and I won't let you take them somewhere that will teach them that trust is wrong. Thex stared at her. Then he looked down at the cubs. They were trying to look brave, but their scales were pale with fear. I will explain about water, Thex said finally, so you understand why they reacted this way. Then we will discuss what happens next. Hana wanted to argue more. She wanted to tell him to leave, but she needed to understand. She needed to know why the cubs had been so terrified. Okay, she said, tell me. Thex walked to the bathroom and looked inside. The shower was still dripping. He made a sound of disgust. On the Vreln home world, he began, water is death. Thex stood near the bathroom door, his large form blocking most of the light. Hana sat on her bed with the 3 cubs pressed against her. Tak had positioned himself between Hana and Thex. Director Quan stood by the main door, watching everything carefully. Our world is not like yours, Thex said. His voice was hard, like stone grinding against stone. The water on the Vreln home world is poison. When it rains, the rain burns. It comes from clouds that carry acid from the volcanic mountains. Young Vreln are taught from birth to fear it. Hana felt her stomach tighten. She looked down at Nola, who was trembling against her side. In the rivers and lakes, Thex continued, the water carries diseases, parasites that burrow into flesh, creatures that wait in the dark depths to pull down anything that drinks. Water is where weakness lives. Water is where the unprepared die. That's horrible, Hana whispered. That is reality, Thex said. Vreln young learned to survive with minimal water. We learn to drink quickly and move away. We learn to never trust water, never relax near it. And most importantly, we learn that showing vulnerability near water is a death sentence. Vris made a small sound. Thex looked at her. You understand, young one, you were taught this before your pod died. Vris nodded slightly. Her claws dug into the floor. So when they heard me in the shower, Hana said slowly, they thought I was being attacked. Yes, Thex said. They heard water falling. They heard you making sounds. To them you were dying, and they tried to save you. He said the last words with something like disgust in his voice. Why is that bad? Hana demanded. They were trying to help. Because Vreln do not help the weak, Thex said flatly. If you cannot save yourself, you deserve to die. That is how we survive. That is how we have always survived. These cubs should have watched you die and learned from your mistake. Hana felt anger rise in her chest. She stood up, careful not to disturb the cubs. They're children. You expect children to watch someone die and feel nothing. Yes, Thex said simply. Vreln children are not like human children. They are born knowing that life is a battle. Sentiment is removed early. Attachment is discouraged. Only the pod matters, and even then, only until the young are strong enough to survive alone. That's not life, Hana said. That's just existing. There's a difference. Your species can afford such thoughts because you live on a gentle world, Thex replied. You have time for feelings. You have time for weakness. We do not. Director Quan finally spoke. The question is, what happens now? The cubs have clearly bonded with Hana. They see her as part of their pod. That is the problem, Thex said. He turned to face them all. These cubs have imprinted on human behavior. They will grow up thinking it is acceptable to show fear, to protect the weak, to form emotional attachments. They will be useless as Vreln. They will be outcasts. Maybe there'll be something better, Hana said quietly. Thex's eyes flashed. There is nothing better than being Vreln. I disagree. The room went very still. Nobody talked to a Vreln warrior that way, especially not a human. But Hana wasn't backing down. Your way makes survivors, she said. Our way makes people who want to live, not just survive. There's a difference. Explain this water ritual to them, Thex said suddenly. Show them that you deliberately stand under falling water. Let us see if they can understand such madness. Hana looked at the cubs. They were watching her with those yellow eyes, full of confusion and lingering fear. She made a decision. Come with me, she said to them, all of you. The cubs followed her to the bathroom. Thex and Director Quan came too, standing in the doorway. Hana turned on the sink just a little. Water flowed out slowly. All three cubs jumped back. Tak hissed. It's okay, Hana said. She put her hand under the water. Look, it doesn't hurt. Human water is different from Vreln water. This water is clean, safe. We need it to live. The cubs watched, fascinated and horrified. Nola crept forward first, as she always did. She was the bravest when it came to new things. She reached out one claw and barely touched the stream of water. Nothing happened. The water just ran over her claw and down the drain. It's not hot, Nola said, surprised. Not burning. Vriss came next. She touched the water more firmly. Then she put her whole hand under it. Her eyes went wide. It's cold, it feels strange. Tak was last. He approached the sink like it might explode. But he trusted Hana. He had learned to trust her, so he put his hand under the water. For a long moment he just stood there feeling it. Then he looked up at Hana. Why do you stand under this? Because it cleans us, Hana explained. It washes away dirt and sweat. It makes us feel better when we're tired. On Earth we love water. We swim in it. We play in it. We drink it every day. We drink water too, Vriss said. But only fast, only when we must. You can drink slowly here, Hana said. She cupped her hands under the water and brought them to her mouth. She drank. The cubs watched like she had just performed magic. Thex made a disgusted sound from the doorway. You are teaching them to be soft. I'm teaching them to be safe, Hana shot back. They're not on the Vreln home world anymore. They're here, and here water won't hurt them. She turned back to the cubs. When I was in the shower, I was just cleaning myself. I wasn't being attacked. I wasn't in danger. I was doing something that humans do every day. I'm sorry I scared you. But you made sounds, Tak said, like you were hurt. Hana almost smiled. I was singing. Humans sing when we're happy. I was happy because the hot water felt good on my sore muscles. The three cubs looked at each other. This was too much, too different from everything they had been taught. Water was the enemy. Water was danger. But Hana stood under water and sang. Hana put her hands in water and smiled. Hana drank water slowly without fear. I don't understand, Vriss said quietly. You will, Hana promised. I'll teach you if you want to learn. The Vreln Collective will not allow this, Thex said. His voice was sharp. These cubs must be raised properly. There are training camps, facilities designed for orphaned young. They will learn to be warriors there. They will learn to be strong. They're already strong, Hana said. She put a hand on Tak's head. He leaned into her touch. They survived losing their pod. They survived being brought to a strange place full of aliens. They survived their fear long enough to try to protect me. That takes strength. That takes foolishness, Thex corrected. In 2 weeks, a transport ship will arrive. It will take the cubs to the nearest training facility. There, they will be raised by proper Vreln instructors. They will forget this human softness. No, Hana said. Everyone looked at her. No, Thex repeated. His voice was dangerous now. These cubs chose me, Hana said. They follow me. They trust me. I won't let you take them to a place where they'll be punished for having feelings. Director Quan stepped forward. Hana, we have treaties with the Vrelm Collective. If they want their young returned. These cubs are orphans, Hana interrupted. They have no pod, no adults to claim them. By galactic law, they can be placed with any guardian who accepts responsibility for them. You want to be their guardian? Thex asked. He sounded shocked. Yes, Hana said. She didn't hesitate. The cubs looked up at her. Even Tak, who tried so hard to be brave and strong, looked hopeful. Nola pressed closer to Hana's leg. Vriss made a soft sound, almost like a purr. The Vreln Collective will not accept a human guardian for Vreln young, Thex said, but his voice was less certain now. Then the Vreln Collective can come here and tell me that themselves, Hana said. Until then, these cubs stay with me, and I'm going to teach them that water is nothing to fear. I'm going to teach them that caring about others isn't weakness, and I'm going to teach them that they can choose what kind of realm they want to be. Thex stared at her for a long time. Then he looked at the cubs. They were all watching him with wide eyes, their scales pale with nervousness. Finally he said, "You are a fool." Maybe, Hana agreed, but I'm a fool who keeps her promises, and I promised these cubs they were safe here. Thex turned and walked out without another word. Director Quan sighed. You just made an enemy of the Vreln liaison. I don't care, Hana said, but her hands were shaking. She had just challenged a warrior species right to their own young. There would be consequences, she knew that. But when she looked down at the 3 cubs pressed against her, she knew she had made the right choice. Tomorrow, she said to them, we'll practice with water some more, just a little bit, okay? Tak nodded slowly, okay, Hana. It was the first time any of them had spoken her name with trust instead of fear. That made everything worth it. 2 weeks passed since the shower incident. Every day, Hana worked with the cubs, teaching them about water. It was slow work, careful work. The fear ran deep in them, woven into their instincts like threads in cloth. The first day, she just let them watch the sink run. They sat on the bathroom floor, tails wrapped around their legs, and watched water flow. Tak watched the longest. He was trying to understand it, trying to make it fit into his view of the world. The second day, Hana filled a small bowl with water. She showed them how she could put her whole hand in without getting hurt. Then she left the bowl on the floor and walked away. An hour later, she came back. The water was gone. Small wet footprints led away from the bowl. By the 4th day, Nola was drinking straight from the sink. She would stand on her back legs, put her mouth under the stream, and drink slowly. Not the quick, fearful gulps that Vreln usually took. Slow drinks, like she was tasting the water, learning its texture. Vriss took longer. She was the cautious one, always thinking before acting. But on the 6th day, she asked Hana a question that changed everything. Why does water fall from the sky on Earth? Hana sat down on the floor with all 3 cubs gathered around her. It's called rain, she explained. It's part of a cycle. Water on the ground gets warm from the sun. It rises into the air and forms clouds. Then it falls back down as rain. The rain fills rivers and lakes and oceans. Then it happens again. But it doesn't burn, Tak asked. His scar was less noticeable now. He was growing. No, Hana said. On Earth, rain is gentle. Farmers need it to grow food. Animals need it to drink. Children play in it. Play in it, all three cubs said at once. Yes, Hana laughed. When I was young, I loved playing in the rain. I would jump in puddles. I would let it soak my hair. It was fun. The cubs couldn't imagine this. Rain that was fun. Rain that was gentle. It was like saying fire was cold or darkness was bright. It didn't make sense. But they were learning that many things about humans didn't make sense. And somehow, those things still worked. Thex came to observe sometimes. He would stand in the doorway, arms crossed, watching Hana work with the cubs. He never said anything, just watched with those dark, unreadable eyes. One day Hana turned to him. Do you want to say something? I am wondering, Thex said slowly, why you do this. You gain nothing from it. These cubs will never be truly Vreln. You are ruining them for their own kind, yet you continue. Because they deserve better, Hana said simply. They deserve to grow up without constant fear. They deserve to know that the universe isn't just about surviving. Sometimes it can be about living. You speak like someone who has never faced real danger. Maybe, Hana admitted, but I've seen what your kind of strength does. These cubs flinch when they hear loud noises. They have nightmares. Nola cries out in her sleep. That's what your training camps gave them. That's what your version of strength looks like. Thex was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that surprised her. Not all Vreln agree with the old ways. Hana turned to look at him fully. What? There are some, Thex said carefully, who think we have become too hard, too focused on survival at all costs. They wonder if we have lost something important in becoming so strong. Do you think that? Hana asked. Thex didn't answer. He just turned and walked away. By the 10th day, Hana introduced the cubs to a small pool. It was really just a large tub she had requisitioned from storage. She filled it with water and let it sit in the cubs' room. They circled it like it was a dangerous animal. They poked at it with their claws. They smelled it, but they didn't touch it with anything more than a single claw tip. Then Nola did something no one expected. She climbed into the water. It only came up to her ankles. She stood there, looking down at her feet under the clear water. Her scales were pale with fear, but she was doing it. She was standing in water by choice. Nola, Vriss whispered, come out, it's too dangerous. It's not deep, Nola said. Her voice shook a little. It's not hot, it's just wet. She took a step. Water splashed. She jumped, then realized nothing had hurt her. She took another step, then another. She was walking through water. Hana wanted to cheer, but she stayed quiet. This needed to be the cubs' moment, not hers. Vriss went in next. She was more careful, testing each step. But soon she was standing next to Nola. They looked at each other, then at the water around their legs. They looked amazed. Tak was last. He stood at the edge of the tub for a long time. He was the leader. He was supposed to be the strongest. If he showed fear, what did that mean? You don't have to, Hana said softly. Not if you're not ready. But Tak looked at his sisters in the water. They were okay. They were safe. Hana had been right about everything else. Maybe she was right about this too. He stepped in. The water was cool around his feet. Strange, foreign, but not painful, not burning, not attacking, just there. He walked to where Nola and Vriss stood. They stood together, three small Vreln cubs standing in water, breaking hundreds of generations of instinct. Then Nola did something even more surprising. She sat down. Water came up to her chest. She gasped, but she didn't get up. She just sat there, letting the water surround her. Her scales shimmered under the surface. It feels good, she said, wonder in her voice. Hana, it feels good. Vriss sat down next. Then Tak. They sat in the shallow water, and for the first time in their lives, water was not the enemy. It was just water. Hana felt tears in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. This was a victory, a small one maybe, but it meant everything. Over the next few days, the cubs spent more and more time in the water. They learned to splash. They learned to float on their backs. Nola learned that if she moved her arms and legs a certain way, she could swim. It was clumsy and slow, but it was swimming. Thex came to watch one day. He saw the three cubs playing in the water, actually playing. Nola was splashing Vriss, who was trying to splash her back. Tak was practicing holding his breath underwater. "This is not proper," Thex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They're happy," Hana said. "Look at them. When was the last time you saw Vreln young actually happy?" Thex didn't answer, but he watched for a long time, and when he left, Hana thought she saw something different in his eyes. Not approval exactly, but maybe understanding. On the 14th day, everything changed. A message came through on the station's communication system. Hana was with the cubs in their room when Director Quan called her. "Hana, you need to come to my office, now." Something in Quan's voice made Hana's stomach drop. "What's wrong?" The Vreln Collective responded to Thex's report. "They're sending a ship." Hana felt cold. "When?" "It'll be here in 2 days." 2 days? Hana looked at the cubs. They were drying off after their swimming practice. They were laughing. She had never heard them laugh before today. "They want to take them," Hana said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes," Quan said. "Vreln elders are coming. They want to evaluate the cubs personally. And Hana, they want to know why a human thinks she can raise Vreln young better than their own people can." That night the cubs knew something was wrong. They always knew when Hana was upset. They pressed close to her as she sat on the floor of their room. "What's wrong?" Tak asked. Hana didn't want to tell them. She wanted to protect them from this fear, but they deserved the truth. "Some Vreln adults are coming here," she said. "They want to meet you. They might want to take you away from me." The room went very still. Nola started shaking. Vriss's scales turned almost white. Tak stood up, his small body tense. "We don't want to go," he said. His voice was firm. "We want to stay with you." "I know," Hana said. Her throat felt tight. "I want you to stay too, but I might not have a choice." "Then we'll fight," Tak said. "We'll fight them." "No," Hana said quickly. "No fighting. We'll talk to them. We'll show them how well you're doing. We'll make them understand." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it would work. The Vreln Collective was ancient and powerful. They had rules that went back thousands of years. What made her think they would change those rules for 3 cubs and 1 human who cared about them? That night none of them slept well. Hana lay on the floor with the 3 cubs curled around her. She felt their heartbeats, fast and afraid. She stroked their scales and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The next morning they went through their routine, but everything felt different. The cubs barely touched their food. They didn't want to practice swimming. They just wanted to stay close to Hana. Thex came by in the afternoon. He looked at the cubs, then at Hana. "They know," he said. "I told them the truth," Hana replied. "They deserved that." "The elders arriving tomorrow are not kind," Thex said quietly. "Captain Vihorek leads them. He is old tradition. He believes any weakness must be burned away. He will not approve of what you have done here." "Then I'll have to make him approve," Hana said, but her voice shook. Thex studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He knelt down to the cubs' level. They shrank back from him, but he spoke to them in their own language. Hana couldn't understand the words, but the tone was gentle, from a Vreln warrior. When he finished, Tak looked at him with wide eyes. Thex stood up and looked at Hana. "I told them to be brave tomorrow," he said. "I told them that sometimes the bravest thing is to tell the truth, even when you are afraid." Then he left. That night as Hana lay in the darkness with the cubs pressed against her, she heard a sound she hadn't heard in weeks. Nola was crying, not loud, just small, frightened sounds. Hana held her closer. "I won't let them hurt you," she whispered. "I promise. No matter what happens, I promise." She just hoped it was a promise she could keep. The Vreln ship arrived exactly when it said it would. Hana stood in the docking bay with Director Quan, watching as the massive vessel locked into place. It was dark metal, covered in scars from battles she couldn't imagine. It looked like it had been built to destroy things, not to carry passengers. Behind her, hidden around the corner, the three cubs waited with Thex. They were shaking so hard that Hana could hear their claws clicking against the floor. The airlock opened with a hiss. 5 Vreln warriors stepped out. They were all bigger than Thex, their armor thick and decorated with marks that Hana guessed meant victories or kills or things she didn't want to know about. At the front walked the largest Vreln Hana had ever seen. Captain Vihorek. He was scarred everywhere. One eye was clouded white. His claws had been sharpened to points. When he looked at Hana, she felt her breath catch in her throat. This was what the cubs would have become. This was what the Vreln called strength. "I am Captain Vihorek," he said. His voice sounded like rocks breaking. "I have come for the cubs." "I'm Hana," she managed to say. Her voice sounded tiny in comparison. "I've been taking care of them." "You have been contaminating them," Vihorek corrected. "Thex's reports are disturbing. You have taught Vreln young to play in water. You have taught them to show weakness. You have made them soft." Director Quan stepped forward. "The cubs have been thriving under Hana's care. They've overcome trauma, they've learned new skills, and they've—" "Silence," Vihorek said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The single word carried enough weight to stop Quan mid-sentence. "I did not come to hear excuses from administrators. Where are the cubs?" Hana looked back to where the cubs waited. She could see Tak peeking around the corner. When he saw Vihorek, he disappeared again. "They're frightened," Hana said. "Good," Vihorek replied. "Fear is appropriate when facing an elder. Bring them here." Hana walked back to where the cubs huddled. All 3 of them looked up at her with terrified eyes. Their scales had gone completely pale. "You have to come out," Hana said softly. "I'll be right there with you. I won't leave you." "He'll take us away," Nola whispered. "He'll take us to the training camps." "Maybe not," Hana said, "but you have to be brave. Can you do that for me?" Tak was shaking, but he nodded. He stood up first. Vriss followed. Then Nola, who grabbed onto Hana's leg and wouldn't let go. They walked into the docking bay together. When Vihorek saw them, his face twisted into something that might have been disgust or might have been disappointment. Hana couldn't tell. "These are Vreln cubs," he said. "They cower like prey animals. They hide behind a human. What has been done to them?" "They've been through trauma," Hana said again. "They watched their pod die. They were brought to a strange place. They needed time to heal." "Vreln do not need healing," Vihorek said. "Vreln need strength. These cubs should have been sent to a training facility immediately. There they would have learned that grief is weakness, that attachment is death, that only the strong survive." "They are strong," Hana said. She was surprised by how firm her voice sounded. "They survived something horrible. They adapted to a new environment. They learned to trust again. That takes incredible strength." "That takes foolishness," Vihorek said. He took a step toward the cubs. They pressed closer to Hana. "A Vreln who trusts is a Vreln who dies. You have taught them wrong." "I taught them that not everything in the universe wants to kill them," Hana said. "I taught them that sometimes it's safe to let your guard down. I taught them that caring about others doesn't make you weak." Vihorek laughed. It was a terrible sound, harsh and cold. "You have taught them lies. In the real universe, everything does want to kill you. Letting your guard down means death. Caring for others means watching them die and being unable to stop it." He knelt down to the cubs' level. They tried to shrink back, but there was nowhere to go. "Look at me," he commanded. Slowly, Tak raised his eyes. He was shaking so hard his scales rattled. "You are Vreln," Vihorek said. "You come from a lineage of warriors that goes back 10,000 years. Your ancestors conquered star systems. They made entire species kneel. They never showed weakness, never showed fear, never showed mercy. and you hide behind a human like a newborn. They're children, Hana said. Her anger was rising now. They're not supposed to be warriors yet. They're supposed to play and learn and grow. They're supposed to feel safe. Safety is an illusion, Vihorek said. He stood up. I am taking these cubs to the training facility on Vreln Prime. There they will learn what it means to be true Vreln. They will forget this softness. They will forget this human who taught them weakness. No, Tak said. Everyone stopped. The small cub had spoken. His voice was quiet, but in the silence of the docking bay, everyone heard it. What did you say? Vihorek asked. His voice was dangerous now. Tak stepped forward. He was still shaking, but he moved away from Hana and stood in front of Vihorek. I said no. We don't want to go with you. Vihorek stared at him. Cubs do not have choices. Cubs do what they are told. Hana says we can choose, Vriss said. She stepped forward too, standing next to her brother. She says choosing is part of being strong. Hana is wrong, Vihorek said. Then we choose to be wrong, Nola said. The smallest cub stepped forward to join her siblings. We choose to stay with Hana. The docking bay was completely silent. Hana felt tears on her face but didn't wipe them away. The cubs were standing up to a warrior who could kill them with one swipe of his claws. They were terrified, but they were doing it anyway. That was bravery, real bravery. Vihorek's face was unreadable. He looked at the cubs for a long time. Then he looked at Thex, who had been standing silently against the wall. You allowed this, Vihorek said. I observed it, Thex replied. There is a difference. And what did you observe? Thex stepped forward. Hana noticed that he looked different somehow, less rigid. I observed cubs who were traumatized begin to heal. I observed them learn new skills. I observed them form bonds with a caretaker who actually cares if they live or die. Caring is not our way, Vihorek said. Perhaps it should be, Thex said quietly. Another long silence. Then Vihorek turned back to Hana. You truly believe you can raise Vreln cubs better than their own kind? I don't know, Hana said honestly, but I know I can raise them with kindness, with patience, with love, and I think that's what they need right now. Not training, not hardness, just someone who cares. Love makes one weak, Vihorek said, but his voice was less certain now. Does it? Hana asked. She gestured to the cubs. These three just stood up to you. They're terrified, but they're still standing here. They chose to face the scariest thing in their world because they love me and I love them. Does that sound weak to you? Vihorek looked at the cubs again, really looked at them. They were small and scared and shaking, but they hadn't run. They hadn't hidden. They had spoken their truth to a warrior who could crush them. This is irregular, he said finally. Many things about this situation are irregular, Director Quan said carefully. But the galactic adoption laws are clear. Orphaned young can be placed with any guardian who accepts responsibility and can provide adequate care. Adequate care from a human, Vihorek said, for Vreln cubs. Look at them, Hana said. They're healthy, they're learning, they're happy. When they first came here, they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't sleep. They were just waiting to die. Now they play, they laugh, they swim. They have hope for the future. They swim, Vihorek repeated. He sounded shocked. Yes, Hana said. They learned that water doesn't have to be scary. They learned that some fears can be overcome. Isn't that strength too? The strength to face your fears and move past them. Vihorek was quiet for a very long time. The other warriors with him looked uncomfortable, like they weren't sure what to do. Finally, Vihorek spoke. These cubs will never be traditional Vreln, he said. I know, Hana replied. They will be different, strange. Other Vreln may reject them. Then they'll find their own way, Hana said. They'll make their own path. This could be a mistake, Vihorek said. Maybe, Hana agreed. But it's a mistake made with love. That has to count for something. Vihorek looked at Thex. You will remain on this station. You will observe and report on the cub's progress. If they become too soft, too weak, too damaged to ever integrate with Vreln society, they will be sent to the training facilities. Is that understood? Yes, Captain, Thex said. Horek looked at Hana. If you fail them, human, if you break them in your attempt to fix them, I will return. And I will take them regardless of your protests or your laws. Is that understood? Yes, Hana said, but I won't fail them. We will see, Horek said. He turned to the cubs one last time. You have chosen a strange path, but you have chosen it with courage. Perhaps there is hope for you yet. Do not make me regret this decision. Then he turned and walked back to his ship. The other warriors followed. The airlock closed. The ship undocked and disappeared into the stars. For a moment nobody moved. Then Nola made a small sound and ran to Hana. Vriss followed. Tak walked slowly, trying to maintain some dignity, but he was shaking so hard he could barely stand. Hana knelt down and wrapped her arms around all three of them. They pressed against her, claws digging into her clothes, scales rattling with relief and fear and joy all mixed together. You did it, she whispered. You were so brave. We were so scared, Nola said into Hana's shirt. I know, Hana said, but you did it anyway. That's what bravery is. Director Quan smiled. It seems you've officially adopted 3 Vreln cubs. I hope you know what you're getting into. I don't, Hana admitted, but we'll figure it out together. That evening, after all the excitement had died down, Hana took a shower. She left the bathroom door open. The cubs sat on the floor outside, playing with some toys that Hana had found for them. The water ran over her shoulders, warm and comforting. She was exhausted. The day had been terrifying, but they had won. The cubs were safe. She heard a sound and looked out. Tak had stood up and was looking at the shower. Hana, he called. Yes. Tomorrow, can we learn to swim better? Can we try the deep water? Hana felt her heart swell. Yes, she said. Tomorrow we'll swim together, all of us. Promise? Nola asked. Promise, Hana said. She finished her shower and came out to find all 3 cubs waiting for her. They followed her to her quarters like always. They curled up around her feet like always. But something was different now. They weren't following her because they were scared. They were following her because they chose to. They were following her because she was family. And maybe, Hana thought as she drifted off to sleep, that was the strongest bond of all. Not fear, not obligation, but choice. The choice to trust, the choice to love, the choice to face the universe together instead of alone. In a universe that valued strength above all else, these 3 small cubs had found a different kind of strength. And they had found it in the last place anyone would have looked. In the gentle hands of a human who had taught them that rain wasn't an attack. It was just water, and water could be wonderful.